Melissa, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
How are you?
Great, Dan. How are you?
I'm g- I'm
Good.
good, thanks. So you were just telling me that you grew up in Kansas and went to grad school in Maryland and moved to New York City in August of 2001.
That's right. I spent most of my formative years in a little town called Derby, in Kansas, which is just south of Wichita, Kansas. And I did my bachelor's degree at Wichita State University. And then I went to the University of Maryland in College Park to pursue a master's in music. And I did kind of the young artist opera track, around the country. I did a year in Alaska doing a program out there. And then I landed in New York in August of 2001.
So you came initially for opera.
I did. My training was in vocal performance and in opera performance. And that was really my main career trajectory was to do a performance career. However, I had I had always I taught piano. I mean, I played piano from a very young age, and I also played violin. I taught piano. My mom's a music teacher. My mom was director of a church choir. My dad sang in the choir. I have a very strong church choir, church music upbringing, as well as a music education upbringing. So it wasn't foreign to me to take some side roads into teaching and doing a little bit of teaching artistry and doing some other work on the side that wasn't solely performance focused.
So you were doing things that would eventually lead to the position you have now as the music director at Trinity.
Yes, little did I know.
It was all going to be useful.
I followed in my mom's footsteps and I had no idea that I would.
We met at a performance back in April. I think it was
It was April, I think. Yeah.
April, the second part of Handel's Messiah, and I also saw the first part in December. And I've only seen it at the Philharmonic and also at Trinity, the two part, and I was blown away by the version that you conducted. So thank
Thank
you
you.
for that.
Oh, well, it was so exciting. It was my first time doing my first time on that side of the podium ever.
Really?
I mean, for Messiah, having sung Messiah probably over 100 times with various groups throughout the past 30 years, this is my first time this year to conduct the piece.
Oh wow, I'm
Yeah.
astounded. Yeah. So you were a soloist in the Messiah.
Yes, I've sang the solos in Messiah many times. I sang in the choruses. Began singing and learning Messiah way back when I was in high school, singing in church choir on Sunday mornings. So I'd sing little snippets. And so I have been learning that piece since I was probably 12.
So it's in your DNA now at this
It
point.
is, yes. And it was in my DNA as a singer, but not as a conductor. So it was new to learn it that way.
Was there a big learning curve? How did you jump into that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, having done several projects this past year, Messiah was one of the more easy ones to do and to conduct. And it's because I innately knew the piece so well as a singer and for so many years. So it helps having just the years and years of performance experience made it coming up to the podium to lead the piece infinitely easier than some of the other projects that I've done at Trinity, where perhaps it's a new piece of music or it's a newly commissioned work, or I have a Steve Reich piece coming up. I have a couple of Steve Reich pieces coming up in the fall that require a totally different mindset and approach as to how I will do it because I haven't ever had the performance experience with it before. But Messiah, having lived with it for so long and so in so many different ways and so many different interpretations from other conductors, it made it really easy to step into that. And I'd always had ideas along the way of, wonder how this part would be if this was faster, or, what would it be like to do the dynamics or articulation this way? So long before I stepped onto the podium, I had already had, for the past decade, my own thoughts about I wondered how Messiah might be if it were done a different way.
So all this whole time you were sort of thinking of creative potentials, possibilities for where it could go, what you could
I
maybe do.
was, without realizing that I was going to be given this position and doing that. But I did have those thoughts all along the way, particularly for the past, decade or so, in working at Trinity and doing many, many messiahs at Trinity.
It makes a lot of sense when I think about the performance because it seems so fresh, and it seems so immediate. It was electric. It was just such a beautiful rend. And again, I've only seen it another time at the Philharmonic and I've heard recordings of it, but it really felt alive.
Good. Well, and that's the thing that I really wanted to bring to it was, my energy, which on the, in as a conductor, I can be quite energetic. um, uh, and kind of that electrifying experience of Messiah, because it's not like I don't want to say that, I don't want to seem negative, but it's not your grandma's Messiah where you're going for 3 hours and you're sitting and there's applause between it's certainly not like the first Messiah I ever saw or participated in many, many years ago. I mean, a completely different, dramatic, intense, very fast pace experience, uh, much like an opera, in that the plot doesn't stop. We're not stopping to pause and take a breath and having having clapping and any of that stuff. It just keeps going. The drama just keeps going straight through. So I really come to it from a dramatic approach.
Yeah, I think people have it in their minds that the Messiah is a slog.
Yes, and it's not, but if you do it the right way. Um, so there's I had the choir memorized, which you saw that there was no scores at all. And that's something I had been thinking about at least for the past decade was why can't this choir just do this memorized? Like they all basically have it memorized. There's no reason the soloist can't step up and be memorized. Part of my work ethic as a soloist through all of my training has always been that if you're a soloist and you're stepping up there to sing, whether it's opera or whatever it is, you need to know it well enough to not have the score. So even if it's an oratorio, if I'm doing Mendelssohn Elijah or something, where, typically you would hold the score and sing from it, you need to know that music. It has to be living in your body in the sense that throw the score away. You don't need it. So I'm a big proponent of no scores and of storytelling and not using those as a clutch. And so I told the choir when I took the position in 2023, I said, the first big thing we're doing is Messiah memorized. I've been thinking about it for years and we're going to make it happen. And I know that you all can do it. So that was a big part of why that performance felt a little bit different. And it was very exciting because the energy the choir had amongst themselves also translated out to you all, but just removing any boundary and only being storytellers. That made a big difference, as well as creating the trust amongst themselves and with me to know, oh, we can do this without having to rely on any music. We know this well enough to live into it and to be able to concentrate on just the text, which I believe is what Handel intended.
Yes, and it does seem like there's not necessarily a consensus. You listen to different versions of it, and each one sounds completely different, right?
Yeah. There are so many different versions. I don't remember like on my Apple iTunes. I mean, there's like over 600 different recordings like on my, not that I've downloaded them all or listened to all, but like if I go down and scroll, there are so many. And not to say that one interpretation is right or not. I've listened to, I have, probably 3 or 4 favorite ones that I love, what this person does there, but I like what this person does there, so we all kind of build our own type of interpretation based on what we've heard and learned over the years.
What are some favorites?
Some of my favorites. So, Bill Christie's recording is a favorite of mine, and I love a lot of what he does, particularly in the overture. Nicholas McGeegan's recording from 1991 is one that has been on my playlist for like 20 years. There's a lot in there that I love, and I love what he does. I really love the way he treats the arias. There's a new one that Emmanuel Haim did a couple of years ago, which is fantastic, and some new choices, especially in the arias, with some of the different ornaments that the singers do, and some of the chord changes in the continuo that I think are just amazing. And I used a couple of those. So, you kind of have to gently steal from other people certain interpretations. So there's just so many lovely things out there. But, for me, when I'm looking at a recording, no matter what it is, I'm usually looking at the length of something. Of okay, do I want to listen to this 3 hour Messiah, or do I want to listen to this 2 hour and 45 minute Messiah? Because I prefer a faster tempo for most things. I prefer a fast-paced type of show. So not to say that the longer ones aren't, they're also wonderful in their own right. But when I'm going to look at certain, even just a choral, like an anthem for church, if I wanted to listen to like 10 different recordings, I'm probably going to listen to one that's longer, and most of the ones are going to be the shorter ones that I gravitate towards. And I don't know if that's because of, it's 2026 and attention spans are not what they were. You've heard this from other people already, I'm sure. No one has quite the same attention span as they did even 8 years ago. And I feel like you need to like pack a punch and do it and get it in quick and get your message across before anyone becomes bored. And there's an art to doing that without it being too fast and still taking the slow moments. So, there were some moments in Messiah where I took a lot of time and I let some silence, live in the moment, because it really needs that. But then you would make it for it later.
So you're really curating the Messiah in a certain way, as in addition to being the conductor, you're really curating the experience in a sense.
Well, certainly in the way that I would shape the color and articulation of the orchestra, and definitely with the choir, kind of the affect that I want them to have. And, with the tempo of, each movement and how that's going to, it's very, very specific. Yes.
Is there a certain kind of specificity in your mind when you approach the piece, or does it start to unfold as you are realizing it?
Well, honestly, usually in my head, I'm thinking things a little bit faster than they have to be in the space. Usually I'll use the example of the aria, Why Do the Nations, which Steve Hrysick sang. Now, typically that aria is pretty fast and it's really impressive. And the faster it is, the more impressive it is. And it's vocal fireworks. It's such a show off for the bass baritone voice. And the text also helps kind of accentuate that tempo. Why do the nations so furiously rage together? I mean, it's a powerful declamatory text. It can get to a point where if it's too fast, it starts to have, there's two things. In the room, it starts to not work. So in the space we're working in Trinity, when we do things in St. Paul's, there's a fine line between fast and exciting and too fast. And that's something I have to work with all the time. And so I always have to have somebody out, in the hall listening while we're doing things to say, no, Melissa, you just take the energy off a little bit. They've never told me I'm too slow, but sometimes I am too fast. So sometimes I have to just like one less espresso or something.
Because of the acoustics of the space?
Yeah, because of the logistics of the space, because the acoustics just can't, it sounds too muddied, and then the text doesn't quite come through.
Oh, interesting. So you're working with the space as well, of course.
Yes, yeah. So like when I do a dress rehearsal or say a soloist rehearsal for a big work like that, I always have one of my colleagues, usually it's Mel Baker, who's our administrative artistic planning director, who's also she plays flute, and so she's an orchestral musician. She also reads my mind really well, so she knows what I want.
Very handy.
I also really trust. You have to have some ears you can trust in the hall, and I can go out and listen and decide. But like for certain things, you have to stay. You need to stay in the front and be listening, because in Trinity Church, it sounds what I'm experiencing up there in the front is different than what an audience member will experience halfway back. So it's really important that we always have some ears out in the space to tell us, like, is this tempo working? Is the orchestra too loud? Are they overshadowing the singer? Do we need more text from the singers? Things like that. So that's one thing, is just working with the acoustic of the space. That will help determine tempo and, where we're going to land. But then the other thing, and this was interesting with this aria in particular, because it was Stephen Heisleck's aria this year, and we talked about the fact that the text of that, "Why do the nations so furiously rage together?" It was a timely text to be up there proclaiming with everything that's going on in our world. And it felt like that aria can often just sound angry, and we didn't want it to have an angry feel. And Stephen really said, I don't want this to feel like I'm shouting at people, because I don't think that's what people want to feel right now. It's a little too close to home. You know what I mean? So we tried to kind of figure out what was the tempo that would work, and where could we get the orchestra in terms of their articulation and what they were doing, so they could really still play full out and with energy, but yet not in such a like in your face type of way, which is typically with that aria. It's very shouty and shouty is the word I keep using, but it's a little bit, it's very declamatory in that way. So we just wanted to have a gentler take on it. So we landed in a good place, but it just took, it took a couple times. It still had to have the energy, but just kind of, and Stephen and I both kind of talked with the orchestra about, even when you're playing this, can you think of it more in a gentle, expressive way rather than a driving forward, aggressive way. So that's an example of something that we kind of adapted based on, what was happening in the world in April of 2026. And when we do it next December, it might have a totally different feel.
It really is a living thing, huh?
It is. So sometimes things just change depending on what's happening in our city and our world that day. And that obviously also happens on Sunday morning every week. We do a variety of anthems at church, a whole different set of curated music every Sunday. And, that's all dictated by what are the readings today, and what, or perhaps what's gone on in our world this week, or, so just my approach to how we're going to interpret the music is always informed by other things around us.
It's not just the music. It's not a static thing. You have the energy of the moment,
Absolutely.
of the space, of the people that are performing it, of the people that are even in the space. There's all these elements, and it's all coming together in one place, and it's creating this experience that you can't really duplicate. Even if you recorded it, it would be a different thing.
Exactly. And recordings are great and wonderful. I'm so glad we have them. They're such a useful tool, but there is something about live performance that's unique to that one time.
It's true. And I never understood the Messiah until I heard it live. You feel it in your body. The people that are singing are vibrating the molecules in the air, and it's going through the air, and then your body is resonating with this.
Yeah. And especially in Trinity Church, when you felt at the very end, the final amen, that I brought the big organ in.
This would be in part two, right?
This was in part two. Yeah. At the end, I brought in the big organ. And when he's using those 32-foot pipes, the huge ones in the back, I mean, you feel it through your feet. You really do feel the music in your body. And that's something that you can't experience through headphones or an at-home speaker necessarily. So
It's true. It's a whole different experience. You're completely immersed in it. And I remember being kind of dazed as I walked out of there, just like feeling just
what's
really
happened?
feeling, yeah, what was that? And it's amazing that a piece like that can still resonate. And I wonder, you spoke about how there were some things in the piece that kind of reflected the times, the current times. And I wonder what else we can learn from a piece of music like that.
I did a whole talk with someone about this before the first part in December, and what it was like at the time when Handel wrote the piece, and what the times were like in the world, and why he wrote it, and what purpose it served, and you know, Messiah. I guess to sum it up, um, Messiah helps to bring a sense of hope. Um, Hope and looking forward and knowing there's a better future beyond, no matter what your faith system is and what you believe, um, there is something beyond. There's something beyond us that's bigger. And I think when the times are the toughest, I think that's something important for us to hold on to know there's something better and it's beyond us. And I think that's something that Messiah helps to express to people no matter their faith background. I mean, although this is certainly based in, Christian faith background, I think lots of people can hold on to some of the themes from that and apply it to their own personal spiritual formation.
So this was written in the 18th century in London, right? Would have
Yes.
been like mid 18th century, I want to say.
Yes, 17, yes, mid to late. He actually wrote it for Easter. Yes, and that was the intention, was that it's for Easter because it does tell the story of Jesus's birth, but then also the passion and then resurrection and ascension. So the intention was that it would be for Easter, although it was done in a theater, not in a church space,
Hmm.
when it was originally performed. It has since then been, often done in church spaces instead, and often done at Christmas time instead of Easter, even though the original intention was a springtime.
How did it become a Christmas?
I think because of part one, because of all the references to the birth of Jesus, and everything in part one it's associated with the Christmas season and Advent, and those are also some of the most memorable tunes. That part is shorter. It's about 45 to 50 minutes of music. So often, I mean, I don't think that this happened 250 years ago, but at least today, a lot of organizations will just do the Christmas portion in December. Um, it aligns with the time period that we're in. People love it. There's a lot of great choruses and arias in there. Um, and it's like an hour long of music rather than a 3 hour long concert of music.
I took my friend who a wonderful musician and goes to see a lot of shows. In fact, he works in the industry, so he takes people on special tours to other countries to see shows and things like that and to see performances. And he described it, the 1 hour version of Trinity as humane.
That's nice. Good. Well, it is. I mean, listen, there's a lot of reasons to do it that way. And particularly in New York City in December, um, you could go every night to a different show and see a different thing. And For me, it's a busy time. We all know that because we've lived there and lived through it, and you're always running around from one event to another. Um, for me, um, having had such a background in music education and teaching young people about this music and bringing my own children to Messiah and trying to get the younger generation to come see these classics. Um, it's going to be an easier sell if it's an hour than 3 hours. So like that's part of it. It's like, how can I get the young people from, these couple high schools that we have, that we partner with, you know, Will they come to a 3 hour Messiah? Probably not. Will they come to a 1 hour if I do it at 5 o'clock? Yes. And they did. So that was a lot of the reason of, A, to reach more of our immediate community of young people right around us. Not to mention, other folks in New York. A lot of our choir members, they also have young children, and some of their young children have never been able to come see them sing Messiah, and this year they were. Um, so, and for a lot of folks in New York, like I said, New York's it's a busy time in December, and you've got this and that, and not everyone has time to dedicate a 3 hour night for a whole show, but they do have time for 1 hour, and then they can go have dinner, and then
You're making it accessible for people.
yeah, that was the main goal was of doing the split, part one and then part two and three later, was to make it accessible so that more people could come experience it. Because that's if no one's there, then why are we doing this? It's lovely to do it for ourselves, but the point is to spread the word, and to share this with people. So we wanted it to be accessible for more people, and it worked. I had one person after this December said, "Well, aren't you doing the rest of it right now?" And I said, "No, we're doing the rest of it in Easter season." He said, "Well, why not? Why aren't you doing it now? That's wrong. You should do it all." I said, so I had to go through my whole thing with them. Um, so
I
I
think
had
most
one
people were grateful.
complainer after the first performance, and everything else I heard was, "Oh my gosh, thank you for doing it this way, so that it was just a little more palatable, a little more accessible and easy for new people to come, and for my schedule in December." Or I heard a lot of different things as to the why it worked.
But the
Um,
quality of it was just so high. It was such incredible. And actually, that's one thing I wanted to touch on. It seems like you're very aware of where we are on a consciousness level, what we're able to absorb in the moment, that we are changing very rapidly. The attention span has gone down. We have to adapt. For me, as a painter, I kind of struggle with this. And I think all visual artists are very aware of this too, because now if you can get somebody to look at a painting for longer than 10 seconds, 30 seconds, I mean, that's a good painting. That's a, right.
exactly. Um, yes, so I've programmed so that most of our concerts are 75 minutes or less, because I figured out that that's kind of the sweet spot. Is it needs to be, around an hour is best. No intermission is best. Anytime you add an intermission in, I mean, while that works, it extends the whole thing, for 20 extra minutes, because it's the logistics of having an intermission. It's possible to have a short pause, like a 5 minute pause between some things, so people could just get up and stretch. But when you're doing the whole intermission and folks are going to use, there's facilities and all that, so that ends up tacking on a lot of time to a concert. So we prefer to do no intermission. Maybe a pause where somebody speaks for a little bit, and do, like, say we don't do an introduction before we start the concert, but we do it partway through, and we have some words halfway through, just so you get a little break, and you could, like a seventh inning stretch, kind of. So that works a lot better, 75 minutes tops. And so we kind of do that with everything. And I've just kind of made that a unwritten rule of how we're doing concerts at Trinity. With the exception of a few things, there's a few things that need to just be done in one sitting because of the storytelling aspect of it. So like the St. Matthew Passion of Bach, we're going to do that next spring. That will all be done in one sitting. There will be an intermission. Yes, it's a 3 hour concert, but you know what? We're going to do one concert. People will come. There's a whole subset of folks in New York that want to come sit through a 3 hour concert, and that's great. So, you know, in another year, we'll try it where we split it up into parts, like we did Messiah, and see how people feel about that. But yeah, I'm aware of people's attention spans, and it's harder and harder to hold on to them, just in all mediums. And
you find a way of working with what you have, so you're able to capture
Oh
people
yeah.
as much as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with Messiah, you know, a lot of people make cuts to some of the movements. I and some people say don't cut anything ever. There's lots of schools of thought of what you can do and not do. And I just said, okay, well, I'm going to do what I think's best. I did make a couple of cuts.
I noticed that you cut the last part of part three, right?
Um, I cut the B section of the trumpet shell sound aria.
I was waiting for that one.
Otherwise,
I was,
otherwise it's a 12-minute aria.
uh-huh.
So we cut that B section. And it doesn't affect the dramatic storytelling. It's still implied. We cut a chorus called "Lift Up Your Heads," which talks. It's the moment after Jesus gets up, after he's ascended, back up to heaven. And so one might argue, but that's right when he got back in. Lift up your heads, open wide the gates when he got back up to heaven. But I said, yes, but then if you just skip right to the rest that follows it, then it's implied that that's where he is. So in my head, it made sense. And of course, the choir, because we were memorized and, most of us, I said, we talked about it. I like to kind of do a democratic process with some of these things because we had the time and we're able to do it. I said, I need to make a couple cuts in part two. Let's talk through this together. I know what I would like to do, but I'd like to hear from you. Which arias or which choruses are harder to memorize? Which ones do you not love? Guess what? We all agreed. None of the singers want to sing Lift Up Your Heads ever again. It's just one of those that it's not satisfying as for the choir to sing. So it was a very easy decision to do. I didn't have one person say, hey, we missed that chorus, because the drama just keeps moving on. So yeah, and then there was one other spot earlier in the second part that I just made a quick cut and nobody noticed.
Wonderful experience. I want to circle back to something you said about the color of the choir.
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah, I did.
I'm curious about, and I had this in my mind at the concert. I was kind of closing my eyes for a moment, and the choir was singing, and I could almost picture it being like woven together, like each individual singer is becoming part of this tapestry, which is much more powerful and stronger when you layer these voices together. And there's something very unique about choral music in particular. I wonder if you could speak just to the idea of the quality of voice and what it does.
Sure. So our choir, I mean, they're the most talented individuals. Um, they are. I love them all. They are such, they are all so unique in that they are excellent singers in an ensemble, and they can all step out and be fantastic soloists. Um, but together, the sum of their parts is greater, like you were saying. So they're really able to be malleable and flexible in things that I ask for. And so one of the things that I might say, so there's a part at the end of part three, since by man came death. And it starts in a way, that's one of the spots where I took a lot more time and I went super slow on purpose. So I asked them there to have a very mysterious tone, something that was almost like a haunted kind of tone, very breathy, like the word mysterious kind of sums it up. I don't think I had a color necessarily for them other than um, uh, sometimes I use actual color words with them, but usually I will refer to it more as thick or thin in terms of color. And what I mean is the color of, like, is it dark or is it lighter? Is it brighter? So rather than a specific color on the color palette. So that had a very, you know, thin, mysterious, but yet kind of dark and mysterious type of color to it in one section of it. And then it's like everything changes and it turns to uh since my man came death, came also but then came the resurrection of the Lord. And at that part, it's like the electricity comes on, and it's like, okay, and now, you've got to change your color to super bright, super focused, super, excited and, alive rather than mysterious and whispery. So just, we use a lot of those kind of descriptor words in terms of a singer's color palette of their tones. So we use a lot of those descriptors within, not only within choral music, but also with their solo singing. We would use that as well.
I love that imagery. I felt that too. I think it comes through when you experience a piece like that and you experience that language in the way that the tone, like you absorb the tone and you absorb this quality.
Exactly. It's not unlike how it would be if you were listening to a narrator, tell a story, and how they would change their vocal quality within the spoken word. So it's the same thing. It just translates to singing.
I don't know where I'm going with this, but I feel like I it seems like it's like you're like the painter and you have all these colors at your disposal, not literal colors, but
Yes, but you do. Exactly. No, that is what it's like because your voice, um, the other thing about it is, the voice, and I played other instruments and that's all wonderful too. And you can do the same you can do it on a violin and you can do, you on an oboe, and you can also have that same color palette of sounds to use. The thing about the voice is that it's so internal and it's so personal because it lives with you always. You can't go put it down over there in the corner and walk away from it. It's always there with you. So, I feel like the voice is so intimate and personal, and it makes it a little bit different from every other instrument.
they say that we were singing before we were speaking as a
Yes,
species. I'm not sure if that's true, but it makes sense.
it
That
makes sense, doesn't
perhaps
it?
it does. Maybe we imitated birds or nature sounds
Mhm. Yeah.
and became
Yeah.
language that
Yeah.
eventually, yeah.
I like to think we were.
We're so materialistic in a certain way. And I'm not saying it necessarily as a negative or critical thing, but just as a obvious, we worship numbers and which is extremely bizarre and abstract when you think about it. The things that are, I think, some of the most powerful things you could absorb are things like art and music, things that you can't really quantify that experience.
Exactly. There's not, yeah, and it's also kind of back to what we were talking about recordings versus live performance. Like you really can't, recordings can be, they're top notch. They're such useful tools for all of us. And I'm so glad that we do have them. And yet at the same time, it can't touch what happens in a live performance and what kind of feelings and what that evokes in a listener or in the performer. Because, you know, recordings are modified.
It's the same thing
Be
with seeing a
perfect.
painting.
Exactly.
It's seeing a painting in person. It's a living thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I had a discussion with a friend of mine who has a background in philosophy. He's been on the podcast, but he was saying that it's the difference between an object and an image. It's like an image is something that you see static on a computer, and an
Hmm.
object is a thing that you experience in real life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a living thing.
Live performance is a living thing. It's the same. Yeah.
Were you interested in Baroque music before you came to Trinity?
Um, in Baroque music, so I had, you know, as I was growing up, I mean, I played a lot of Bach on the piano. That was like, I did a lot of that already growing up, but I wasn't, I really became immersed in the study of Baroque music when I got to Trinity. So I started at Trinity as a singer in 2006. Um, and Trinity was already well known as, being a choir of, Baroque interpreters and doing, a fantastic Messiah. They've been doing it since Messiah's been at Trinity since like 1770. So there's a long history of Trinity doing Messiah. So I really did, I was really able to delve in and learn the most about Baroque music since I've been at Trinity. My studies before then were mainly focused in opera and so a lot of Mozart, a lot of Rossini, more of the classical and beyond. But kind of the intense look into Baroque music happened more in the past 20 years since I've been at Trinity. And, I've sung almost every Bach cantata now and every other major Bach work and several others. And so I learned from experience on the job um, as a singer.
Were you there basically full time as a singer? How does that
Yes.
work?
So, well, it wasn't full time, but full time as in that was my main singing job that, you know, was proportionally the most of my income. Um, so I started at Trinity in 2006. The previous 5 years I'd been at St. Bart's, which is another Episcopal large church, excellent, excellent place, and I learned, you know, a lot of music there as well. Um, but I came to Trinity in 2006. I sang in the choir, and you know the choir, and it's kind of the same way today. I mean, it's every Sunday, and usually there's a rehearsal once a week, and then there's concerts sporadically throughout the year. There's probably recording projects, there's other external projects we might do. I mean, today it's far busier than it was 20 years ago. There's a lot of work for our people to do. There's constantly another something that they need to go sing with, or another organization that said, hey, can we use the Trinity Choir for this? So yeah, I mean, even this morning I was working with one of my colleagues to finalize who the tenors were going to be on, a certain project for next season that's outside of Trinity. So we get a lot of requests to use the choir for other things. So our singers stay very, very busy. So back in 2006, I was singing in the choir, and I also began working with the youth chorus, kind of as an assistant teacher, because I had a lot of teaching experience and I could play the piano, and I liked working with young people. So I did that until 2010, and when the director of the youth chorus, he was the organist and director, he left, I believe, in 2010 or 2011. At that point, they made me the director of the youth chorus. So therefore, I was singing in the choir and directing the chorister youth chorus music outreach program at Trinity. And so that took me all the way up to 2023, then when I became the director.
So
So
that
I
was
spent,
pretty natural to get.
yeah, so eventually, I went from part-time singing in the choir, taking on a couple other things, to then by 2011 I was working full-time singing in the choir and doing all these other duties. And um eventually I realized in when did I stop in the choir full-time? At some point around probably 2020 or 2021. It was probably mid somewhere within the pandemic time. I really started taking a step away a little bit more of so much singing in the choir, because leading the music education and the youth chorus and conducting all of their programs and their concerts was taking so much time. And I really enjoyed it. And I was, I still sang in the choir, but I wasn't actively also pursuing a lot of solo outside gigs to do as well as my Trinity gig. It was just too much to manage. And I had two kids and
Yeah,
a lot of things. So,
yeah.
I mean, having a solo career as a singer it's tough. It's tough when you have a family and you're trying to balance everything and do, I did it for several years, and it's hard.
Traveling a
So
lot.
yeah, trying to travel and then come back and do the regular job and also be away and also be a mom, and it's exhausting. So I still go away like a couple times a year. I'll go out and do, a gig here or there,
Where
with
you
another
sing.
group. Where I'm
Yeah,
just a singer.
yeah.
I feel like it's really good for me, and luckily my boss, the vicar, agrees. um, I think it's a good thing for the conductor to occasionally go back out and be in the choir spot or be on the other side because you really learn so much being back in the trenches of like, oh right, this is what it's like. Oh yeah, when this happens, this is what it feels like. Or, if the conductor does this, boy, couldn't they just finish the phrase? And why do they keep stopping us? And so I learn a lot about how to be a good leader and how to be a good conductor by going out and singing in other places because it just gives me a little bit more experience and perspective.
It seems like everything you did leading up to your position at Trinity now was really getting you prepared for that role.
It was, and I didn't even realize it. Yes, it was. I had no idea.
I think the
Um,
best things unfold naturally like that,
yeah,
right?
it does. If I had to, there was something, I don't know, I saw online or something that said if you could tell yourself something 10 years ago that you would have wanted to know today, what would you have told yourself? Which that's always a tricky question, but for me, I thought back even further than 10 years. It was more like 30. And it's like I should have kept playing the piano and organ at the level that I was. I mean, when I was 12 and 13 and 14, I played the piano very well, and I also played the organ sometimes at church. So I could do both. And eventually, kind of singing took over that, which is also a good thing. If I had focused all my focus on piano and organ, I don't know that I would have been the singer that I am. And I don't know that that would have made me the choral conductor that I am. Um, but I wish I still felt very comfortable playing the organ. I can a little bit, but I don't, we have, you know, two brilliant people who play the organ at Trinity who should play the organ all the time and not me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just one of those things, but you run out of time. You can't do every single thing.
Do you ever mess around in the organ at Trinity?
Occasionally. So one of our organists, Alcy, we sit down and I say, okay, just give me an organ lesson and we're just going to learn so I can, because it's a gigantic Munster organ.
Powerful.
It's it's new. There's a gajillion stops, and I learned on an electronic organ in my living room here. So, um, it's a different thing when you're working with a big pipe organ. So it takes an enormous amount of skill, and it's like you have to have a separate, different brain just to work that organ. So sometimes Alcy and I sit down and we just have a mini organ lesson because I say, what if there's a Sunday morning and everyone, all three, you and Avi and our organ scholar are all sick and no one's there and I have to play the organ. I need to know what to do so that I can play a
You
hymn
could
and
play it.
get
Yeah.
through. Oh yeah, I could
Yeah.
do it. I could get us through it. I'm not going to play
Nice.
anything complicated, but I could
You're
definitely
you're not going to
just.
throw down any Bach or anything.
No, 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 I'm not going to
Yeah.
try to.
Yeah. I did actually hear a recital and a Bach piece at St. Paul's in London last summer.
Oh yeah,
That is a powerful organ.
which at St. Paul's
Yeah.
Cathedral, yeah,
Yeah. Whoa. That's
yeah,
legit. Yeah,
in
really
such a
nice.
amazing, huge space. Yeah.
Beautiful church. What other music has influenced you coming up as a musician and now?
Oh, I mean, mostly classical music because because my mom was a classical pianist and church musician, and so I mean, I grew up listening to Beethoven, Mozart, you know, Brahms, a little bit of Bach, but probably mostly music in the classical romantic era is what I listened to growing up. Um, and then, moving into college, I immediately, as I was focusing on vocal performance and opera, it was a lot of training in the, Mozart, a lot of Mozart, a lot of things of the classical period, not necessarily the Baroque. Um, let's see what else. In terms of church music, I was raised Methodist, so it's not quite the same style as the Episcopal Church. So the things that I program and sing and that we sing here at Trinity, it's not the same pieces and it's not the same, you know, um, not the same that I grew up with. Um, we use two different hymnals in the Episcopal Church. I mean, there's a few different, but there's the 1982 hymnal that we use, and then there's the Levis hymnal. The Levis hymnal stands for Lift Every Voice and Sing, and it's the African American hymnal. So most of the songs that I resonate with are all in that hymnal, are all in the Levis hymnal. They're the same ones that I sang in my Methodist church
Hmm.
growing up. So almost all the hymn tunes that I'm very familiar with in the Episcopal Church um, are the ones that are from the Levis hymnal that I also grew up with, which matches a lot the Methodist hymnal. So it's just interesting like that. So it's more of the that traditional American spiritual-ish type of music that I
Hmm.
grew up with.
I see. I see. Do you have a favorite Beethoven?
Oh, wow, that's an you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say Moonlight Sonata because that was, I mean, I heard that, when I was little, and I remember being 8 years old, and I was like, Mom, can I please learn this? Please, when can I learn this? And so, I mean, I remember starting to learn that at a very, very young age. And the thing was, I really didn't, what's funny is I was not a great sight reader. I played by ear. So I would sit here, I'd beg my mom, just play me the first page. Just, Mom, please play it for me. If you play it for me, then I can learn it. So I've been trying to make my mom play the music. If she would play it for me, then I could learn it because I could play it by ear. Or if I went and I found the record and I listened to it, and then I could try to play it. So it was my way of trying to get out of sight reading was to play it by ear. But yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind because I can see myself hearing it and saying, I'm going to learn to play that piece of music. I mean, so yeah, so I played very much by ear on the piano, and I still do. I mean, I can sight read, but I'm a better player by ear. What's interesting is this as a singer, I'm a much like for singing, absolutely, the sight reading is the easiest.
Huh.
You're
That's
only reading one
interesting.
line.
I wonder
Well,
why.
because it's because when you sing, you just concentrate on one line of music.
Oh,
It's just
there's
your
not other
line.
stuff going on. You don't
And
have
then
to just.
when you're reading the piano, and heavens, if you're reading the organ and you've got a foot pedal part too, you've got multiple lines of music. So,
So one
um,
hand's doing this, another hand's doing that. You have the
listen, your
foot
feet might be
thing
doing
going
something
on.
else. Yeah. So, yeah. So it was funny for someone who hated to sight read, um, as a pianist. All of a sudden, when I switched, and when I just said, I'm just going to sing, oh, it was nothing. So singing was so easy, and being able to sight read and do that. And same with the violin. That's just one line I'm reading. And so it was so easy. Um, so I was able to advance quickly because of my sight reading skills. But that all relates back to because my mom made me learn to sight read and wouldn't let me just play it by ear on the piano.
Trinity is one of the oldest churches in the country, right? Or in the city, or
It is
both.
1696 it was established. Yes. So one of the oldest Episcopal churches in the not the oldest in the country, but one of the oldest in the country, and certainly in the city of New York, in terms of
And
Episcopal denomination.
a lot of history there. Hamilton's buried there, is that right?
Hamilton is buried there. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a beautiful place. The church itself, the adjacent, there's another building across the street with this modernist sort of architecture and the bridge that goes across to the other.
Oh, yes. Our office building.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yes. So when I started at Trinity, it was this, not the same building, but it was an office building there, and that's where our offices and our parish hall and many other things were housed. And then they did a big, rejuvenation several years ago, and they tore that office building down and rebuilt it. However, the footbridge had to stay up. So they had to get very creative because footbridges are not allowed in New York anymore. But that was a
Really?
historical, yes, was able to be left
Because of the
because,
historical.
yes. So if we had taken it down, we wouldn't have been able to put it back up. So it was, we're really happy for that footbridge. It's unique. Yeah, so the new office building was completed shortly before the pandemic, in late 2019, and then we moved in there, and and then we weren't in there for a few years. So it still sometimes feels like we're getting used to the new office building. Um, But yeah, so it's a beautiful modern building and it looks across the footbridge at the churchyard and the cemetery. And so it's,
Just a
yeah, it's
lovely.
lovely to look out there and see all that history and all that American history right there.
It's about a few blocks away from the old World Trade.
Yes. So very close to the Freedom Tower. And then, we have another, our sister, our chapel, which is St. Paul's Chapel, is just up the street. So that's also part of our Trinity campus. Um, we don't hold Sunday morning services there, but we do a lot of other things in that church. We do a Sunday evening service. We do a lot of concerts in that space. And that's actually the oldest building in continual use in New York City. Um,
Really?
yes, so that's St. Paul's Chapel. And that's the one that's very close.
To
Um,
World Trade.
yes, yeah. And that was kind of it was it was a respite place for volunteers after 9/11. And it's kind of, it's known as it wasn't damaged. I mean, several things around it were damaged, but that chapel stood um, after 9/11. And and it's an important part of that part of our history too. So, this coming September, as we honor, and recognize the 25th anniversary, we'll be doing several things there at the chapel to commemorate those who were fallen.
I was really struck by the diversity of singers at Trinity, and you had one verse in Spanish.
Yes. Oh, yeah. I know. I have all these plans for what we're going to do in the future. So, there's a colleague of mine out in California, Ruben Valenzuela, who has helped kind of edit and recreate the Spanish version of the Messiah. And Enrico, who sang part of his aria in Spanish, he is on Ruben's upcoming recording of that entire piece in Spanish. And so Enrico came to me and said, "Hey, what would you think if we did part of my aria in Spanish?" I said, "I would love that. Why not? It's all the more representative of who we are in New York. I mean, this is everybody, and it is a melting pot. And yes, we have people who speak every language. And why wouldn't we throw some Spanish into our Messiah?" So for me, that was just the beginning of something that we'll do a little bit more in the future, where we will sometimes do a Messiah where we mix it up and have, some of the traditional and some of the Spanish. And, one of the things we do at Christmas time, on Christmas Eve, we do several services in a row on Christmas Eve, but one is just in Spanish for our Spanish speaking community. So this year, I'm only mentioning it because I was working on it yesterday because I plan for the whole June is my time when I plan for the entire year out till next June. So I was just working on finalizing Christmas Eve yesterday. And we plan to do one of the movements of Messiah during the Christmas, just for the Christmas Eve service in Spanish, for unto us a child is born, because that's exactly the text that needs to happen on Christmas Eve.
Of course.
And we'll do it from Messiah and we'll do it in Spanish. So, so folks will have a chance to, even our Spanish speaking community will be there, in church and have a chance to hear a little snippet of
Oh,
Messiah.
wow, that's so cool. So you compose the church services as well as concerts.
So all of the church services, I curate all of um, yes, every service. So, Trinity does a service. I should take that back. All of the Sunday services.
Hmm.
Trinity does a weekday service at 12:05 Monday through Friday, and that's just organ. So I let the organist choose what happens there. There's no choir, so um, they choose what hymns they're going to play. We kind of have a running list of things that we might do, but that's organ only, no choir. Sundays we have an 8 a.m. which is only spoken, but then we have a 9 a.m., 11:15, and uh, sometimes an afternoon something happening, and then we have a compline service, and then we have all sorts of other services throughout the year.
They
We
do
have
Vespers and stuff too, right?
yeah, we have
Matins? Or is it
evensong.
Matins? Yeah. Yeah.
We have an evensong. We have compline every Sunday.
Hmm.
So my colleague Thomas leads compline and usually um, decides what music's going to be sung there. Sometimes if I'm leading, I'll decide what it is, but usually Thomas will decide what's being sung at Compline. But the main Sunday morning services, um, yes, I have to do all the hymns and all the whatever choral anthems we're doing, and I have a lot of help from my team, which is great. Um, but it's a lot of planning. That's why it takes me about a month to plan for the next 9 months ahead of what we're going to be doing. And I put I I told someone else this recently. I probably put a lot more time and energy into how I plan a Sunday morning and what exact, what the prelude piece will be, how that might relate to what then the offertory piece will be, which how relates to the communion piece, which relates back to what the gospel reading was. So, and then the hymns have to relate to what the readings are, or to what the themes of the day are, or to what time of year it is, or and. So I put so much thought into what happens on a Sunday morning. It's way more thought than how I would program a concert. I mean, programming a Messiah is easy because it's Messiah. It's already done. I mean, you know how you're going to, it's going to be a lot of thought of how you prepare and what you're going to do with your interpretation of the performance. But in terms of what the music is and what music is going to be chosen to be sung or played where, what happens on Sunday morning is like, it's a large part of my thought process.
So are you there leading the orchestra?
Um, on Sundays,
Yes.
yes. So the choir sings every Sunday, and sometimes we'll have people. Sometimes I'll bring in like a quartet, a string quartet, or maybe a jazz band. So sometimes we'll have instrumentalists come and join us, but usually it's just the 24 professional singers that are there singing with the organ. Um, yes, and I conduct every Sunday morning.
Wow. So that's
So
a lot of responsibility.
it's yes, no, it's a huge job. So I don't really have time for a whole lot of other, things outside. It's a full time all the time.
Yeah.
Um, but I really love it and I really enjoy Sunday mornings. I mean, we are a church first, and that is our number one priority is what we do on Sundays. And I have made that my number one priority in my job is what happens on Sundays. The concerts are all like the cherry on top. So we have a lot of concerts that we do as well, but that is second to what happens on Sundays. So hence that's why my programming mind, 90% of it goes to what happens Sunday morning. About 10% of it is dedicated to which concerts are we going to do where and how. Concert
Mm.
programming is easy. Sunday morning programming is a very unique skill.
That's very important because that is the medium through which a lot of the spiritual message is being transmitted, right?
Yes, absolutely. And that's kind of the Sunday morning is an entry point. I mean, it works both ways. Sunday mornings are both an entry point for folks that are just visiting New York and just want to see Trinity Church because of the historical aspect. But that sometimes gets them in the door. But then the music sometimes leads them to say, oh, I'm going to stay because I really like what I'm hearing. Um, and vice versa, sometimes it's a concert that gets somebody in the door because they see something, but then they come into the space and then they realize what kind of worshiping community Trinity is, and then they say, oh, I think I might come back again on a Sunday. So um so it kind of works both ways. And our concerts also, there's a spiritual aspect to all the concerts we do too. um, we do some modern things that, aren't are secular in nature, but we're usually able to weave something in so that, who we are, and this is Trinity Church, and it's not, this is a church first. It comes from a spiritual foundation.
Absolutely. You recently did a version of Brahms' Requiem there, right? This past spring, is that correct?
Yes,
That you went to?
our Downtown Voices, which is our semi-professional community chorus, did Brahms Requiem. That was led by Stephen Sands, who conducts them, and Stephen also sings in the choir,
Hmm.
in our pro choir, and has been there he's been there as long as I have, so a longtime colleague. Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece. I saw it for the first time at St. John the Divine.
Oh yeah, it was just a few days before ours,
Yeah,
which I bet was beautiful in that space too. Um,
wonderful. That space is it's huge.
right? Yeah. Um, yeah, that's the kind of piece. So what's interesting between theirs and ours is that we did ours, I believe Kent used the full orchestra version. So there's, with full forces, and you kind of have to in that space. We actually did a chamber orchestra version. So even though it, oh, you didn't come to, well, ours still filled the space and it was big and it was huge, but we used a smaller orchestra than what you would have heard at St. John.
Will you do it again?
Brahms, yes. It's one of those that's kind of in the rotation of like choral masterworks that we would do often. Just like the Bach Passions and the Bach B minor Mass and, Mozart Requiem and Brahms Requiem and Fauré Requiem. And so there's several, there's many pieces like that are just kind of standard within the choral orchestral, repertoire of things that we would do every few years. So it's just kind of in a cycle. So
Right. Right. Like the opera will play Magic Flute and
exactly,
most,
exactly.
yeah.
Same thing. Yeah, exactly. So we have a lot of things that we will always, I try to do things kind of in a 3 to 5 year rotation. And it's like, oh wait, we haven't done this piece in 4 years. We need to do it next year again,
I
so
see. I see. Yeah,
um
cool.
also because our singers, while many of our singers and the music orchestral musicians have been with us a long time, we will have new people coming in and out. There's a little bit of turnover sometimes. And especially when somebody new and younger is coming in who might not have ever sung Brahms or, played the Mozart Requiem, I want to make sure people are getting a chance to experience this and do
Mm.
this. So so we try to keep things on a rotation, and we do the exact same thing with our youth chorus programs so that the pieces the youth chorus is learning and participating in while they're with us, from middle school to high school, they're gonna sing the Vivaldi Gloria at least twice during their time with us so that they'll know it when they graduate. So yeah, so there's a long list of pieces like that.
City kids have so many advantages like that, to get to
Oh
work with a
my gosh,
choir
they're
like
so
that.
lucky. Yeah, they are, it's so, having raised 2 children in the city, I'm so glad I was able to do that because they don't, that doesn't happen everywhere else. I didn't have that, where I grew up. And so, yeah, they are very lucky that they have these unique experiences to both hear and to participate in some musical masterworks.
Did your kids play music?
Yes, my daughter plays oboe, and she's quite good, and she can also sing, and she's still in college. And my son played clarinet all the way through high school, and then I told him, okay, he didn't have to go to college for clarinet. He also skis and does jumps, and they're both athletes as well as musicians.
Nice.
But my daughter will end up making music somehow in her career because I can already see that that's happening, and my son won't necessarily, but that's okay. But they were both raised with a lot of music in their lives, and my husband's a singer, and so we yes, musical family.
Just to have that experience and have that exposure to music and just things that are creative is such a gift or a real privilege, that a lot of people don't have. Do you ever compose music of your own?
Um, what I mostly do is compose descants for the choir to sing. So sometimes when we're doing a hymn, and then like on the final verse of a hymn, we'll want the sopranos to do, a different part, an extended something that's high. So occasionally I'll compose a hymn descant. Um, uh, you know, I've done a couple other things where what I do more is arrange things. So if it's like, say the rector came to me and said, I really, really like this pop song. Do you think you could make it work for the choir? Yes, I can figure out like how to arrange something and make it work for choir. Starting from scratch with a composition, I wouldn't have time for that right now. I kind of wish I did, but maybe that'll be like in my retirement,
The
maybe I'll
next
do something
phase,
like
yeah,
that. But I
later, yeah.
don't, like right now, I wouldn't have time to do that. I wish I had more days in the week so I could like practice the piano and organ and maybe do a little composition, but I'm running out of time.
Yeah, yeah, not enough hours in the day. So
Hours.
I wanted to ask you what you have. It sounds like you know what you have coming up. for the next year, perhaps. But what's going on at Trinity?
Um, let's see. So, we do, we will start everything off right around 9/11. We have a series of services that will happen at St. Paul's Chapel to commemorate the 25th anniversary. We'll also do a big concert with the Fauré Requiem and Morton Lordson's Lux Aeterna on the evening of 9/11. So that's our first kind of concert event that we'll do in the year is right on 9/11. We follow in a few weeks after that with a celebration of Steve Reich, who's having his 90th birthday this year. And so we do 3 weeks of Steve Reich music, kind of combined with some other up and coming American musicians, because our focus in 2026 and throughout 27 is on kind of, I know we're in 250 right now and we're celebrating our last 250 years, but we want to look forward to our next 250 years. So we're kind of, internally it's called 250 Next, but we're looking at who are the game changers and who are the trailblazers, who are we going to be talking about in 250 years from now. So we're really trying to kind of highlight a lot of American young composers who are making an impact right now. So you're going to see a lot of our concerts throughout the entire season will include new young composers and have a contemporary aspect to them.
Hmm.
So we have Steve Reich combined with some other folks. We will do, and while we also explore the new and the contemporary, we will also, of course, always honor our traditional ones. We've got some Bach at One concerts. We've got the Mozart Mass in C minor. We have the Messiah, because we'll always do that. In the spring, we've got, let's see. Oh, we've got an Eric Whitaker piece. That's a new one for big choir that will be done. We've got Julia Wolf Anthracite Fields, which we have done several times at Trinity. Not at Trinity, but with the choir, but we're going to actually perform it at Trinity in her new orchestral version. That'll be at the end of next May. We're doing the St. Matthew Passion. We're doing a whole series of concerts at One. We're doing a series of jazz at One. We have organ recitals. We have evensongs. We have church every Sunday. So there's some, I feel like I'm probably missing some things. We're doing a Philip Glass opera with National Sawdust, and that's going to be a big deal. We're
What's the
doing,
opera?
it's Philip Glass, it's his Madrigal opera,
Oh, wow, cool.
which is like an hour long. So that will be out at National Sawdust with a group of our singers doing that. That's in March. Um, I'm forgetting because we have a lot
That's
going
a
on.
lot. That's great. That's great.
Right now I'm only thinking about what happens, like the Fauré Requiem, which is, I've done that before, and so that's mostly I'm deciding whether or not I want to memorize it myself or if I'm just gonna do it with music. So that's just because I've done it. That's one of those pieces that's like Messiah. It's like I've done it enough that I don't actually need the music for it, but do I need the music for it? So I'm deciding if I'm going to conduct without music. That's not really a big deal whether I do or not. It'll be a beautiful concert and very timely. The Steve Reich music's going to take most of my summer to prepare for because it's very hard. I'll be practicing, and for something like that, my approach is I basically will learn all of the vocal parts first. So if I can sing the whole piece, if I can sing everyone's part, that's how I learn then how to conduct it, if that makes sense. So in the same way with Messiah, that's why Messiah was easy. I kind of already knew everyone's parts. Even though I don't sing tenor and bass, I kind of knew their parts. So I already knew all the vocal parts. So that's how I approach, learning a new piece is learn all the singer's parts first. And then that will help me then learn the rest of it.
I think about painting in that same way, that you have to know the colors. You have to know what they do. They
Exactly.
have different properties.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the same thing. So, yeah, so I always start with the singer parts because that's what I know, and then I can move on to the other bits.
All this stuff is so good, and I really appreciate what you're bringing into the world because it's so important. And these things help uplift consciousness. And I think we really need more of this in the culture
We
more than
do.
ever.
More than ever. We have to keep doing it. And that's why as much as we can do at Trinity for free, I want us to do for free. I don't want a cost to inhibit anyone from being able to come in the doors and experience this.
I appreciate that too. And it's accessible on that level financially and also in terms of what's being played, how it's presented, the group of people that are presenting it. And I think you have your finger on the pulse of the culture. And it's just really a wonderful thing. So thank you for all your work.
Oh, you're welcome.
Before we go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, just, I mean, I love this job so much. I feel so blessed and honored to like be in the position that I am to do what we do with Trinity's resources and, to offer this gift to the city and beyond. And it's, I think the joke is now like I will probably never retire because I love it so much. My husband's like, "You're never going to leave, are you?" I don't really
It's a
want
good,
to. I love it. I love every single day. My work is not work. It's just it's a pleasure and it's so much fun to do. I wish everyone could find jobs and careers that brings them so much joy. And I'm just very lucky that I have landed here.
and then that is transmitted outward, that love, that joy. Then it's communicated through your work. So I think it's not completely selfish, right? It's something
Oh,
that's
everyone else
shared.
can experience it too. Yes,
Yeah. You've cracked the code, right?
I think I have.
Well, thank you again. It was a
Thank
lovely
you.
conversation. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.